It was 2:58 a.m. when a violent pounding on my front door shattered the night's silence in my little house on the edge of Milwaukee. My first thought was of the old days. 30 years patrolling this city as a detective had taught me that nothing good ever happened at this hour. The house felt too quiet, the air heavy. As I staggered out of bed, my joints stiff from age and memories, I heard that desperate knocking again. Not the doorbell, bare fists. The hardwood floor chilled my bare feet as I hurried down, my hand gripping the banister for support. Downstairs, the entryway lit up as I flicked on the overhead light. The pounding stopped the moment I touched the doorknob. I opened the door and there she was, my daughter, Emily. For a second, the street lamp silhouetted her, but as she stumbled forward into the glow, my heart froze. Her left eye was swollen shut, purple-black and grotesque, blood dried on her lip, finger-shaped bruises on her neck like a dark necklace. Her dress was ripped at the shoulder, bra strap exposed. "Dad," she whispered and collapsed into my arms. Her scent was wrong. Not her favorite lavender, but something sharp, fear. I held her tight, felt her shake as she sobbed into my chest. "He hit me, Dad," she managed. "Because of his girlfriend." I said nothing, only wrapped my arms around her, the anger boiling up inside me, hotter than anything I'd felt since retirement. The calm I'd built for years just evaporated. I led her gently through the long hallway to the kitchen. She could barely walk. I eased her onto a wooden chair, squinting against the two bright kitchen lights. Every bruise, every mark, evidence of what her husband had done. "Don't move," I said, keeping my voice steady by sheer force of will. Years of experience took over. I went to the freezer for ice, wrapped it in a dish towel with trembling hands, then filled a glass of water. She flinched when I pressed the ice to her eye, her good eye searching mine with shame and pain. "Drink," I told her. She obeyed, small sips. I pulled out my phone, snapped photos of her face, throat, torn dress. Years on the force had taught me to document everything. She didn't protest. "Tell me what happened," I asked, settling across from her at the table. Her voice was ragged, story broken into pieces. She'd found a hair tie under their bed, not hers. When she confronted Mark, her husband, he exploded, called her worthless, told her that Lisa, his new friend, was younger, prettier. He said I should be grateful he stays at all. She told me about the fight, how he'd grabbed her by the throat, shoved her against the wall, said if she had a problem, she could leave. "So you came here?" I asked. She nodded, wincing. "He's at home with her, Dad. In our bed." I stood up fast, my chair scraping loud against the tile. My head spun with memories, not just as a father, but as a cop. The girl who once danced on my shoes, the bride who'd asked on her wedding day if her husband truly loved her. Hadn't I seen the warning signs back then? I took a breath and sat again, the weight of years pressing down. I thought of Emily's wedding. The view from the 40th floor ballroom in downtown Milwaukee, Lake Michigan spread out like a silver mirror. Emily in white lace, her hair up, radiant. Mark always at her elbow, his hand on her back, not devotion, but possession. The day had started perfect. Mark, in his expensive suit, charming every guest. But I remember now, the way he'd ordered her food without asking, the way he talked over her during the speeches, how she'd laughed but looked away, cheeks red. The way his hand had gripped her wrist under the table. "She's just nervous," I told myself. "Wedding jitters." But during our father-daughter dance, she'd leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think he really loves me? He's so controlling sometimes." I should have listened. I told her it was nerves, that it would pass. But I saw her eyes then, searching, desperate for help. I'd smiled, reassured her. Told her to give it time. "You're married now. He'll settle down." God, how I wish I could go back and change those words. Now, sitting in my kitchen in the middle of the night, My grown daughter battered and crying in front of me. I saw it all clearly. All the times I'd missed the signs, or chosen not to see them. All the times she tried to tell me something was wrong, and I'd brushed it off. Her hand reached for mine, her voice small. I should have listened to you, Dad. But I wanted to believe in him, believe in the fairy tale. We both did, I replied softly. The guilt hung between us, heavier than air. But tonight, looking at my daughter, bruised, trembling, finally safe, I knew one thing: this was the end of looking away. I stood, anger turning cold and focused. 30 years as a detective, but this was personal. I would not let my daughter suffer anymore. As dawn began to lighten the kitchen windows, I knew what I had to do. Mark wouldn't get away with this. Not now. That morning, as the faint gray light crept into the sky over Milwaukee, Emily finally drifted off on the living room couch, exhaustion overpowering even her pain. I sat beside her, watching the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, her bruised face half shadowed by the quilt I tucked around her. In that stillness, every memory came roaring back: her childhood, her laughter, the first time I held her. How had we ended up here? I brewed coffee in silence, my hands steady now. The storm of anger inside me had crystallized into cold resolve. I sat at the kitchen table, legal pad open, pen in hand, and started building a timeline, exactly as I would for any case. August 7th, 2023. Emily arrives at my door 3 a.m. Injuries: left eye swollen, split lip, bruises on neck, shoulder. Account: husband assaulted her after confrontation about another woman. The evidence was clear. I reviewed the photos on my phone, making sure every bruise, every mark, every tear in her dress was documented. My instincts as a cop had never left me. But this was my daughter, my blood. I felt the rage deeper than anything I'd known on the force. At 7 a.m., I called my old partner, Mike Henderson, still on the force, now a lieutenant. He answered on the third ring, his voice gruff with sleep. "Mike, it's Tom." A pause, then. "What's wrong?" "It's Emily. Her husband, Mark, beat her last night. She's here. I have photos, her statement, everything." Mike was silent, then his tone sharpened. "You want us to bring him in?" "I want it done right. By the book. But I'll be there. She's filing a report." "You got it. I'll get the paperwork ready. Bring her down in a few hours." As I hung up, I realized my hands were trembling, not with fear, but with anticipation. 30 years, I'd watched other families go through this. But now it was mine. Emily woke up around 9 o'clock, groggy, eyes red-rimmed. She winced as she sat up. I handed her the ice pack, fresh from the freezer. "Dad? What now?" Her voice was almost a whisper. "Now, sweetheart, we go to the station. You make a statement. This ends today." She nodded, gripping my hand. We drove downtown in silence. The city felt strangely peaceful, the hum of traffic, the sunlight glinting off the lake. I glanced at Emily, her face pale, jaw set. I'd seen that look before, in the mirror, before walking into dangerous situations. At the precinct, Mike met us at the door. He led us quietly to a private room. Emily told her story, voice trembling at first, then growing stronger. She described everything: finding the hair tie, the screaming, the shove, the hand around her throat, Lisa's laughter from the bedroom. The betrayal, the violence, the final straw. Mike recorded every word, nodding, asking questions only when necessary. He'd handled hundreds of domestic cases, but I saw something different in his eyes now, something personal. After Emily finished, Mike looked at me. "We'll need her examined by a doctor. Photos, statement, physical evidence. We'll pick him up today." I thanked him, emotion catching in my throat. By noon, the process was in motion. Emily was checked by a nurse, her injuries photographed again, her story written down in cold, official language. She clung to my hand through it all, her grip tight. When we left the station, sunlight poured down on the city, almost mocking in its warmth. Emily stood outside the glass doors, hugging herself, looking small against the backdrop of busy downtown. But in her eyes I saw something I hadn't seen in months, a spark. Maybe hope. Maybe just relief that the secret was finally out. "Do you want to go home?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not yet. Can we just walk a while?" We walked through Cathedral Square, past the morning joggers, the families with strollers. Emily told me things she'd hidden for years, about Mark's anger, his little cruelties, the way he'd isolated her from her friends, even from me. How every argument had left her doubting herself, until last night, when the mask finally slipped. "I kept hoping he'd change," she said quietly. "But he only got worse." We sat on a park bench under the old oaks. She watched two little boys playing tag, their laughter ringing through the air. "I don't want Alex and Sophie." She stopped herself, voice cracking. "I don't want the kids to ever see him like that. I have to protect them." I put my arm around her, wishing I could promise her safety, happiness, a new start. But all I could offer was the truth. "You're not alone, Emily. Not anymore. You did the bravest thing you could do, coming here. We'll get through this." She leaned into me, silent tears wetting my shirt. We spent the afternoon at my place. Emily called her best friend, Julie, for the first time in months. She laughed, a real, tired laugh, for the first time in weeks. I cooked her favorite, grilled cheese and tomato soup, the way I used to when she was a kid. As the sky turned pink over Lake Michigan, I realized something had shifted. Emily wasn't just a victim now, she was a survivor, starting over. And as her father, her protector, I knew my job wasn't finished. Mark had hurt my daughter for the last time. Justice would find him. But more than that, I promised myself that Emily would never have to walk this road alone again. Evening settled over Milwaukee, casting long shadows across my quiet street. Emily stayed with me that night. I insisted, and she didn't protest. Her silence said more than words ever could. I made up the guest room, the same one she'd painted sky blue the summer before college. As I closed her door, I stood for a long moment, watching her curl up beneath the old patchwork quilt, her face turned toward the window. Downstairs, I poured myself a cup of black coffee, sat in my worn recliner, and stared at the city lights through the front window. My mind kept replaying everything: Emily's swollen eye, her trembling voice, the faint marks on her neck. Every time I thought I could let the anger go, it rose up again, hot and fresh. I forced myself to focus on the plan. No reckless moves. Everything by the book. At sunrise, my phone buzzed, a message from Mike. "We have Mark in custody. Bringing him in for questioning. We'll update you." Relief mixed with dread. I knew the process well, the questioning, the denials, the games people play when cornered. But this time, it was personal. I tried to eat breakfast, couldn't stomach more than a piece of toast. Emily woke late, shadows under her eyes but a touch of color back in her cheeks. She asked for coffee, held the mug with both hands as if warming herself inside out. "Do you want to talk about the kids?" I asked gently. She nodded. "Alex is at Mark's mom's house. Sophie stayed overnight at a friend's. They didn't see anything, Dad. I made sure." I exhaled. "They're safe. That's what matters most." Emily looked away, fighting tears. "How do I explain this to them?" "You tell them the truth, what they need to know, nothing more. They'll understand eventually." Her lips trembled. "Alex worships his dad. How do I tell him what happened?" I squeezed her shoulder. "You tell him his mom is strong. You tell him you love him. The rest will come when he's ready." Emily nodded, wiping her eyes. "I never thought I'd be here. I always thought I could fix it. That if I just tried harder. Stop. I cut her off, my voice firmer than I intended. This isn't your fault. Not one bit. Don't ever believe that. We spent the morning gathering her things, just the basics, packed in borrowed bags. She didn't want to go back to the house, so I went instead. The driveway was empty. The house felt different, colder, almost stripped of the life that had once filled it. In her bedroom, I paused. Photos of happier days, wedding pictures, the kids on summer vacations, lined the dresser. It felt surreal, touching these objects, knowing how quickly everything could unravel. I found Alex's favorite book, Sophie's Stuffed Rabbit, a stack of old drawings. I packed it all quietly, careful not to disturb the fragile sense of order. Back at my house, Emily sorted through the bags, pausing over the photos, tears in her eyes. It's not fair, she whispered. He gets the house, and I get a bag of memories. Things can change, I told her. This is just the beginning. Not the end. Late that afternoon, Mike called. I put him on speaker so Emily could listen. Mark's been arrested. He's denying everything, but we have your statement, the medical report, and the photos. We'll get a restraining order as soon as possible. He's not getting near you or the kids, Emily. I promise. She nodded, relief and fear warring on her face. Thank you, Mike. After the call, I sat with Emily on the porch. We watched the sun set over the neighborhood, listened to kids playing somewhere down the street, their laughter echoing into the twilight. For a moment, things almost felt normal. Then Emily spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I should have left him years ago. There were signs, Dad. So many times I wanted to tell you, but I was scared I'd disappoint you, scared you'd think I'd failed. I took her hand, squeezed it tight. You never failed. Not once. You're the bravest person I know. She smiled, tears sparkling in the last golden light of day. As night fell, I watched her walk inside, shoulders straighter, step a little lighter. For the first time since that terrible night, I felt hope. We'd started something that could lead to freedom, to healing, to a better life. But I knew this wasn't over. Mark wouldn't give up easily. I could feel it in my bones. The story wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Before bed, I sat alone at my desk and began to write everything that had happened, every detail, every emotion. I wanted a record, not just for the police, but for myself. If there was one thing 30 years as a detective had taught me, it's that memory is slippery. The truth must be written, must be preserved. I closed my notebook and stared into the darkness. Tomorrow would bring new battles. Court dates, lawyers, the pain of telling the story again and again. But Emily wasn't alone anymore. Neither of us were. The following week passed in a blur of paperwork, hushed phone calls, and tense hours at the courthouse. Every day brought something new, a form to fill, a lawyer to meet, a social worker to reassure. Emily did her best to stay strong, but I saw the toll it was taking. Her hands shook when she signed documents. She flinched when her phone rang, always dreading it might be Mark. And at night, when the house was finally quiet, I could hear her crying softly behind the guest room door. I did what I could, made her breakfast, drove her to meetings, picked up Alex and Sophie from school when she felt too anxious to face other parents. I tried to keep things light for the kids, reading them stories, making their favorite pancakes on Saturday mornings, filling the house with the smell of cinnamon and syrup the way their mother used to do. But even the children noticed the change. Alex, at 8, became quieter, more watchful. He asked if he could sleep in my room some nights. Sophie, only 5, drew pictures of Mommy's new house, always leaving the daddy figure outside in the rain. Emily kept those pictures in her bag, a bittersweet reminder of why she was fighting so hard. Mark, meanwhile, wasn't giving up easily. He hired a lawyer, someone flashy from downtown, the kind who made promises in expensive suits. He called Emily, sometimes begging her to come home, other times threatening to fight for custody of the kids, for the house, for everything. One morning, Emily handed me her phone, tears in her eyes. "He says he's going to ruin me. Dad. He says no court will believe me." I gripped the phone, anger rising again. "He's bluffing, sweetheart. We have evidence, and you have the truth on your side." She nodded, but I saw the fear in her eyes. "What if it isn't enough?" I put my arm around her. "Then we keep fighting. I promise you, Emily, you are not alone. Not now, not ever." The first court date arrived, preliminary hearing for the restraining order. Emily was pale, hands twisting in her lap as we waited outside the courtroom. I sat beside her, dressed in my old police dress uniform, the badge polished until it shone. I hadn't worn it in years, but today it felt right, like armor. Mark arrived with his lawyer, Lisa trailing behind him. She kept her distance, her eyes down, but I saw the smirk she gave Emily, cold, triumphant, as if she already knew the outcome. The judge was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s. She listened to both sides, but Emily's testimony was strong. She spoke clearly, her voice trembling only once as she described Mark's hands around her throat. The photos and medical reports spoke for themselves. Mark's lawyer tried to cast doubt, suggested Emily was exaggerating, that she'd provoked the fight, but the judge wasn't swayed. By the end of the hour, the restraining order was granted. Mark was ordered to stay away from Emily, the kids, and my house. He glared at us as he left, rage twisting his features. Lisa followed, her smile gone. Outside the courtroom, Emily collapsed into my arms, sobbing with relief. "We did it, Dad. We really did it." I held her, my own eyes damp. "You did it, sweetheart. You stood up for yourself. I'm proud of you." The next few days felt lighter. Emily smiled more, laughed a little louder. She began to think about the future, not just surviving, but truly living again. She talked about finding a new place for her and the kids, maybe near the lake, somewhere with enough sunlight and room for a garden. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching Alex and Sophie chase fireflies in the yard, Emily turned to me. "Do you think I'll ever be happy, Dad? Really happy?" I smiled. "You already are, in little pieces. One day, those pieces will fit together again." She nodded, leaning her head on my shoulder. "I want the kids to remember this time as the beginning, not the end." "They will," I promised. "You're showing them what strength looks like." The summer passed in a series of small victories. Emily found a job teaching at a local school. She enrolled Alex in soccer, signed Sophie up for ballet. We celebrated Sophie's birthday with cupcakes in the park. Emily even started going to therapy, slowly unpacking years of pain and fear. Mark, meanwhile, grew quieter. His lawyer called, tried to negotiate, but Emily stood firm. She wanted full custody, the house, and a clean break. The law was on her side. Mike, my old partner, kept us updated. No contact from Mark, no new threats. It seemed, finally, that we were moving forward. But I knew from experience that nothing was ever truly over. Trouble had a way of lurking in the shadows, waiting for a moment of weakness. One night, as the first leaves began to fall, Emily found me on the porch, staring at the moon. "Thank you, Dad. For everything. I couldn't have done this alone." I reached for her hand. "You're never alone, Emily. Not as long as I'm here." She squeezed my hand, her smile brighter than I'd seen in years. And as I watched my daughter step into her new life, scarred but stronger, wounded but healing, I knew that whatever storms lay ahead, we would face them together. Because that's what family does. Fall swept across Milwaukee, painting the maples gold and crimson. Our lives slowly began to take a new shape, though nothing was simple. Emily settled into her teaching job, the kids made friends at their new school, and the little rental house she'd found near Lake Park started to feel like home. I visited almost every day, fixing leaky faucets, bringing over groceries, reading bedtime stories when she was too tired. My old detective's instincts never truly slept, but for a while there was peace. Mark's presence lingered like a cold wind. He fought every step of the divorce, filed papers to contest custody, accused Emily of poisoning the kids against him, claimed she was unstable. His lawyer sent emails full of threats and demands, each one crueler than the last. But Emily never wavered. She wrote everything down, saved every message, handed it all to her lawyer, who fought back just as hard. There were rough days. Some mornings, Emily couldn't get out of bed, her energy swallowed by anxiety and old pain. I'd bring coffee and sit quietly, just listening as she tried to untangle her thoughts. "It's like he's still here, Dad," she told me once. "Every message, every accusation, he's in my head even when he's not in the room." "He wants you scared," I said. "It's the last power he thinks he has. But every day you keep going, you take that power back." The court battles wore on. There were meetings with therapists, social workers, and sometimes the judge herself. Alex and Sophie had to talk to a court-appointed counselor, answer questions about life at home. Emily worried constantly about what the kids would say, what they remembered, if they would ever feel safe again. I did my best to shield them, taking them for ice cream after long appointments, distracting them with stories about my old police days. One cold November morning, the final custody hearing arrived. Emily wore her best dress, shoulders squared, determination burning in her eyes. I sat in the back of the courtroom, my hands clenched so tight my knuckles ached. Mark took the stand, looking clean and polished, his charm just thin enough to see through. He lied about everything, claimed he never hurt Emily, that she was unstable, that the kids were scared of her temper. His lawyer nodded along, painting a picture of Emily as the villain. But when it was Emily's turn, she didn't flinch. She spoke with quiet strength, never raising her voice. She described the abuse, the night she'd fled with nothing but her purse, the months of fear and shame. She talked about the children, how she wanted them to grow up safe, to know what love really was. Her lawyer presented the evidence, photos, text messages, doctor's reports. The truth filled the room, impossible to ignore. The judge listened to both sides, eyes steady and sharp. She asked the kid's counselor to speak. The woman's words were gentle but clear. "Alex and Sophie feel safest with their mother. They love their father, but they are anxious around him. They describe a home with Emily as peaceful, with Mark as unpredictable." When the ruling finally came, it was swift. Emily was granted full custody, with Mark allowed only supervised visits. The house was hers. Mark was ordered to attend counseling, pay child support, and stay away from Emily's new address. In the hallway, as the judge's words sank in, Emily broke down in tears, relief, sorrow, and gratitude all tangled together. I held her tight, heart swelling with pride. "You did it, sweetheart. You really did it." After the verdict, life started to feel almost normal. The kids laughed more. Emily put up new curtains and painted the living room a cheerful yellow. She and the children came to my house for Thanksgiving, bringing homemade pies and the laughter I'd missed for so long. But trauma doesn't leave quietly. There were nightmares, flashbacks, sudden tears at small reminders. I walked with Emily through all of it. We talked late into the night, sometimes in silence, sometimes through tears. She joined a support group for survivors, found friends who understood the journey. One Saturday, while we watched Alex's soccer game, Emily turned to me, her eyes bright. "I want to help other women, Dad. The ones who are still stuck, still scared. I want them to know they can get out too." I squeezed her hand. "That's how you heal. You turn pain into hope for someone else." She smiled, the strongest I'd ever seen her. Christmas arrived, the first true holiday in Emily's new home. The kids helped decorate a small tree, their laughter filling every room. Emily baked cookies, hung ornaments, wrapped presents. On Christmas Eve, after the children were asleep, she handed me a card. Inside, she'd written, "Thank you for saving me, Dad. Thank you for loving me enough to fight. Even when I was ready to give up. I wouldn't be here without you." I hugged her close. "You saved yourself, Emily. I just reminded you what you're worth." We stood together by the tree, the world outside cold and silent, but inside our little circle, there was light, and hope, and love enough to start over. As winter faded and the snow melted into Milwaukee's muddy streets, the world seemed to open up for Emily and the kids. Each day, there were signs of new beginnings. Alex learned to ride his bike without training wheels, Sophie brought home drawings full of sunshine and flowers, and Emily's laughter rang out a little more freely. She started volunteering at the local women's shelter, sharing her story with others still trapped in the dark. Sometimes, on quiet Sunday afternoons, she'd invite me over for dinner. I'd watch her moving through her small kitchen, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled up, kids giggling at the table. She looked at peace in a way I hadn't seen in years. "We're doing all right, Dad," she told me one evening as we washed dishes together. I didn't think I could ever be happy again. But here we are. But even as life found its rhythm, shadows lingered. Mark's supervised visits were tense and brief. The kids were guarded around him, and Emily dreaded every exchange, afraid of what he might say or do. Once, after a visit, Alex came home quiet and withdrawn. That night he asked me, "Grandpa, why doesn't Daddy live with us anymore? Did I do something wrong?" I pulled him close, brushing his hair from his forehead. "No, buddy. None of this is your fault. Grown-ups make mistakes sometimes, big ones. But you're Mom and I love you, and that'll never change." Emily's court battles weren't entirely over. Mark appealed the custody arrangement, dragging her back to hearings and mediation sessions. His lawyer sent letters threatening to reduce her child support, questioned every expense, every decision she made. The process was exhausting, but Emily was different now. She stood up for herself, never raised her voice, never let Mark shake her resolve. Sometimes she'd call me late at night, fear edging her words. "He sent another email, Dad. Said he's going to take the kids, that he'll never stop fighting. What if he finds a way?" I reassured her, always. "He's just trying to scare you, Em. The law is on your side. And if he crosses the line, you have me, and a police department that won't look the other way." Still, there were moments when old memories haunted her. The sound of a car pulling up late at night. The sight of Mark's handwriting on a piece of mail. But now, instead of shrinking back, she told someone, her lawyer, her therapist, or me. That silence she'd carried for years was finally gone. Spring brought a kind of quiet victory. The court denied Mark's appeal, reaffirming Emily's custody and the restraining order. His supervised visits continued, but he grew less and less engaged, eventually moving out of state for a new job. For the first time, it felt like the threat was really over. That June, we celebrated Sophie's kindergarten graduation. Emily dressed her in a yellow dress and white sandals, pinned a little ribbon in her hair. I snapped photos as she danced on the playground, her laughter echoing above the crowd. Later, at the park, Emily handed me a soda and sat down beside me, looking out at her children running in the sun. "Do you remember last summer?" she asked quietly. "I thought I'd never get out. I thought I'd ruined everything." I nodded, my throat tight. "Look how far you've come. Look at those kids. You gave them a new life, Em." She smiled, wiping away a tear. "I'm not afraid anymore, Dad. Not of him, not of being alone. I think I'm finally free." There were still challenges, balancing work and motherhood, the occasional pang of guilt or doubt. But they became background noise to the music of everyday life. Emily joined a book club, started jogging by the lake at dawn, made new friends. Alex and Sophie filled their home with drawings and laughter and stories about school. That 4th of July, we had a picnic by the lake. Emily grilled burgers, the kids chased fireflies, and I sat in my old folding chair, watching fireworks burst over the water. For the first time in a long time, I didn't worry about the future. Emily leaned over as the sky filled with color, her hands slipping into mine. "Thank you, Dad, for never giving up on me." I squeezed her hand gently. "You saved yourself, Em." I just stood guard at the door. As the fireworks faded and the crowd drifted home, I gathered my family close, feeling the warmth of their laughter and the promise of a future unburdened by fear. Emily's story wasn't over, but it had changed shape, no longer a tale of survival, but one of resilience, hope, and new beginnings. Summer turned to autumn, and Emily's life kept growing stronger, steadier. The colors of Milwaukee blazed outside her little house, golden maples and rust-red oaks, while inside, warmth and laughter replaced the old shadows. Each day, I saw her confidence bloom. She spoke up at PTA meetings, joked with her new colleagues at school, planned a small vegetable garden in the backyard with Alex and Sophie. One Saturday, we all gathered for a backyard barbecue. Emily flipped burgers, the kids darted around the yard chasing each other, Sophie's giggles ringing out over the music playing from an old radio. When dusk fell, we lit sparklers and told stories around the fire pit. I watched Emily, her eyes bright, her face relaxed. She looked like herself again, the daughter I remembered from years ago, before worry and pain had dulled her light. Sometimes the past crept in. Mark's name came up less and less, but when it did, Emily spoke about him without anger, just a kind of distant sadness, as if he were part of another life. Alex asked about him sometimes, mostly curious, never bitter. "Does Daddy love us?" he'd ask, searching Emily's face for answers. She'd always kneel down, looking him in the eye. "Yes, Alex. Your dad loves you the best way he knows how. But some people aren't very good at love. That's why we build our own home full of it, right here." The words seemed to heal something in him, little by little. That fall, Emily started classes toward a master's degree. She said she wanted to help more families, maybe become a counselor for women like her. Her professors praised her dedication, her compassion. Even on the hardest days, she kept going, refusing to let old fears rule her future. The kids thrived. Alex joined Little League, his glove always hanging by the door, his cheeks sunburned and bright. Sophie took up dance, her feet forever tapping, ribbons tied in her hair. Their rooms were filled with art projects and laughter, reminders of how far they'd come. One crisp October afternoon, after walking the kids home from school, Emily found me waiting on her porch. I'd brought a basket of apples from the farmer's market. She poured us both coffee, and we sat together in the golden sunlight, watching the leaves drift down. "Dad," she said quietly, "do you think we're really safe now? That he's gone for good?" I looked at her, saw the strength in her eyes. "I do, Em. He's far away. He knows the law's watching. And even if he tried to come back, he'd find you're not the same woman he once knew." She smiled, relief softening her features. "I feel strong, Dad. I really do. I never thought I'd get here." I sipped my coffee, pride swelling in my chest. "It's not just strength, Em. It's wisdom. You survived, you grew, and you chose love, for yourself, for your kids. That's what matters." That Thanksgiving, Emily hosted dinner in her own home for the first time. Friends and neighbors filled her kitchen, laughter and music echoing through the rooms. She made a toast, her voice steady, her smile wide. "To family. To second chances. And to the people who never let us give up on ourselves." We all raised our glasses, the glow of the moment warming every corner of the house. After the meal, when the guests had gone and the kids were asleep, Emily and I sat at the table, the remains of pumpkin pie between us. She reached across and squeezed my hand. Thank you, Dad. For every late night talk, every ride to court, every time you believed in me, even when I couldn't believe in myself. I squeezed back, emotion thick in my throat. That's what fathers are for. But you did the real work, Em. You built this new life. She smiled, and for the first time, I saw no fear, no shadows, only peace. As the seasons turned once more and snow blanketed the city, I watched Emily and her children sledding down the hill in the park, their laughter ringing out into the clear winter air. My heart felt full in a way I'd almost forgotten. I realized, looking at them, that this was the legacy I'd always hoped for, not just safety, but the courage to begin again. Not just survival, but joy. And as I walked home that evening beneath the streetlights, I whispered a quiet prayer of thanks, for strength, for second chances, for the daughter who had taught me as much as I'd ever taught her. The darkness was gone. In its place, hope, laughter, and a new beginning.